Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Welcome everyone to the Success in Africa Leadership podcast. I'm Dumisani Magadlela, and today I am honored to be your guest host for this beautiful podcast, Success in Africa Leadership. The purpose of this podcast today is to help Africans to be successful by sharing with them the journeys of other successful Africans. Normally, this podcast is hosted by Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce. But today, ladies and gentlemen, I will be hosting it because I have the honor of interviewing our very own Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce himself. His impact and success have recently been recognized by Thinkers 50, the global rankers of gurus of management and leadership and coaching in the world. This year, Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce has been recognized as one of the coaching legends, an honor given to only 8 people globally annually. Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, thank you for joining us today. Let's transition a bit. Those are your foundational years and your education that you shared in different countries, including in the US. And your Pan-African journey seems to have started early in that, which is fascinating. Let's transition a bit to how did you get into coaching, and maybe emphasis on coaching and leadership development, which is the diet that we feed off these days on the theme of food and vitamins.
You know, it's interesting. I think I got into coaching at a time when the word was not common, at least not in circles that I operated on.
Mhm.
I started to become fascinated with leadership and what leaders do
Mhm.
because my experience after the military academy was another one that seared into my mind.
Right.
I had the perhaps fortune or misfortune to go straight into a war after I was commissioned as a lieutenant. So after the military academy at West Point, I returned to Sierra Leone, which at the time was in the midst of a civil war. And I was immediately dispatched to the war zone. I guess the authorities felt that, I had missed out on all this good fighting, so I should make up for lost time. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But the when I was in the war, one of the things that became very clear to me was that when leaders make bad decisions, their people die. Because in wartime, the time gap between the decision and the outcome of that decision was contracted. And so I could literally see what happened when a leader, an officer usually, or a non-commissioned officer, made a decision and his soldiers paid the price with their lives.
Mm.
Having known these officers, I knew that these were not officers who were quote unquote bad people. They didn't wake up in the morning saying, gee, let me see how I can make sure that my soldiers will die today or tomorrow. So it started to register in my mind that there must be a reason why they made these suboptimal decisions that resulted in these sad and tragic outcomes, other than they're just bad people or they want their people to die.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know what the answer was at the time. Okay. I was fortunate that instinctively I had learned a lot of good leadership principles at
Yeah.
West Point, which I practiced during the war, which ended up saving my life during the war. But I didn't really understand how that baking had occurred.
Yeah.
Now, after the war, after I left the army, I was fortunate enough after to pursue my master's at Cornell. And then I had the opportunity to work for a company that specialized in turnarounds, corporate turnarounds. With that company, they had a division of the company that specialized in the actual, what they called soft skills training, management training, supervisory training, leadership training. And so there was, one part of the company specialized in looking at the numbers, cutting people here, adjust this, change this process, etc. Typical management consulting stuff. Then there was a division that worked on more of the soft skills, and together they came together to make these projects work.
Yeah.
And one of the company's big selling points was that they said with their training that they walk hand in hand with the managers and leaders. And so they sold that as, we don't just do training, we do one-on-one follow-ups. Now, the one-on-one follow-ups were basically leadership coaching.
Yeah.
So they interspersed the training with these one-on-one follow-ups. And I eventually was absorbed into this division, and I worked and was tutored under a gentleman who actually became one of the gurus of coaching, Professor Richard Nesland. And he then trained me on how to do these one-on-one follow-ups, which again turned out to be coaching. So that's how I got exposed to it. And I saw the value of it. Because what was clear to me was that absolutely in group training, which is very useful, folks learn concepts. Sometimes they're new concepts, sometimes they're simply reminded of these concepts. In other words, brought from the back brain to the forebrain.
Right.
But it was in the one-on-one follow-ups that we helped them take these concepts from the forebrain literally to the hands, to action. And each person had particular issues that needed to be handled individually. Sometimes those issues were relative to their job position. Sometimes they were relative to things that they had learned from childhood. Sometimes they were relevant to their gender. Sometimes they were relevant to their race and what they felt about things. Whatever it is, we as the trainers had to earn the trust of these clients, people, in these one-on-one sessions, help them identify what change they wanted to make and what results they wanted to make, and then integrate what they had learned from the training with what they already knew into actions that they would commit to doing, and then we would help them with the follow-up. So in a sense, we were thought partners, we were accountability partners, and we were focus partners. Now, for those who know anything about leadership coaching, that's basically what coaching is. But we never, ever called it coaching. It was only about 5 or 8 years later that I discovered that actually there is such a thing called coaching, and that's what we had been doing.
Wow. The foundations for leadership coaching and leadership development solidly laid. Dr. Modupe, thank you so much for that.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.